Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about countersteering. Countersteering refers to the way that we turn on a motorcycle. And if you want to go right, instead of turning the steering wheel right, in fact, when you're up to speed, you'd slightly turn it left, counter to the direction that you want to go. So why would that be? So let me just talk about, again, what countersteering means a little bit more carefully. If I want to go right, instead of just turning it right like you would on your bicycle, what we in fact do is turn it left. But we don't really turn it left. You just push or pull on the other side a little bit left, but you don't actually even perceptibly move the steering wheel, but you're pushing it. So it's ever so slight. It's a really micro push in the wrong or the counter direction to where you want to go. So why would you do that? Now, if you go look at videos on YouTube and various places, you can see lots of explanations for this. Sometimes they get into the physics, and I think that they're useful. They're potentially great at getting at fundamental principles, but I feel like they sometimes miss the mark in terms of tapping into your intuitions for why it really works. And I think we actually have the intuitions already by virtue of the way we all naturally move. Now, when you're running forward, think of your legs as a strange kind of wheel, right? It's your legs going around in circles, and they happen to just be a wheel that you've got two parts that touch, boom, and then another part of the wheel touches, boom, 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 right? It's a sort of a weird wheel cycling through. Now, the standard way that you might imagine that you turn if you're going around kind of a slow, rounding a soft corner when you're jogging would be you slightly lean into it, and you slightly turn. In some sense, your feet start to move more to the right, and you have to turn, because if you don't turn, you'll start to fall to the left. You need to counter that centrifugal force that's going on, because your body wants to keep moving in the same direction it was. So you slightly lean into the turn. Once your body's leaning to turn, you can get your feet to slightly move towards the right. You are steering rightwards. You're not counter steering in that case. But there's a very common way that we actually all know, ever since we've been children, to move to the right and to move more quickly to the right. Instead of waiting to lean to the right and just sort of, steering to the right, which means moving your feet on farther and farther rightward path and leaning at the same time. Instead, it's to put your left foot way to the left or farther to the left, which would mean that you're actually steering left, right? In the sense of, if your foot suddenly jumps out to the left, it's as if you're steering left, but you haven't leaned to the left. So when you do so, and you suddenly push to the left, you actually end up pushing yourself off to the right, which makes you immediately lean, and it makes you immediately go to the right. In other words, if you want to move to the right and do so quickly, in a very rapid fashion, you steer with your feet to the left. You put one foot, your left foot, far off to the left, and that pushes you quickly to the right, because you start to fall or pushing off from your left towards your right. That's how you do it. So let's just watch a quick video of me running forward first. So let's just watch that first. Good. All right, so you can barely even see that I'm leaning, but I'm sort of just a small lean that happens that lets me start to steer to the right. But in the second case, now watch this. You'll see that I'm going to do it rapidly, and I'm going to steer to the left in the sense that one of my feet is going to go to the left. That's what it is, to steer to the left in terms of this analogy between your feet moving like a wheel and actual wheels. So take a look at this. So you can see I steered to the left. One of my legs shot out to the left, but I never compensated. I never leaned to the left. So immediately I'm thrown to the right, and I could shoot off to the right. It's the same fundamental idea. There's some subtle differences, but that's the same basic idea with countersteering. If I want my motorcycle to shoot its leg out to the left, so to speak, so it can shoot off to the right, well, there's no legs you can't move it, far off to the left and right like you can for your legs, because your legs are, have more degrees of freedom than a typical wheel. But to do that, you have to slightly push the wheel to the left and rapidly, so that suddenly, and don't compensate in terms of weight, and suddenly your bike will be thrown to the right, just like my body was in that video. And I'll be leaning to the right, and I can initiate a very quick movement in the opposite direction of the bike's foot movement, which was slightly to the left. And that was your science moment. If you haven't gotten a copy of Dr. Tim Barber and my new book, which is being heavily censored, not covered by any mainstream journalists, because we are pariahs, having pushed back on the authoritarianism 2.5 years ago. I have been covered historically in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Scientific American, Discovering, everything, everywhere. I haven't been covered by any of those this time, despite it being my 6th book, and I would argue the most important book that I have done. We are not being covered. Go get yourself a copy. If you have read it, give us a review at Amazon. And that was your science moment.